UFC Fight Night, Hall vs. Silva is coming up tomorrow night, and it's free on ESPN+. We got some newcomers, a late replacement, a couple of guys looking for their 4th win this year, and we've got an all-time great hanging it up. Well, let's get right into it. Here's my predictions for UFC Fight Night, Hall vs. Silva. First fight on the main card is a lightweight bout between Bobby Greene and Thiago Moraes. This is one of those fights that's going to make the winner look really good. If Moraes wins, he'll probably do it with a submission and probably pretty quickly. If Bobby wins, it's because he kept standing and beat Thiago severely up. And I find that pretty likely. Bobby's about as hard of a takedown as it gets, and his overall stand-up game is boxing. It's going to dwarf Thiago's. Bobby has been killing it all year. I mean, he's 3 for 3, and he's looking better than ever. Honestly, I think this is a pretty easy pick, but Moraes as a 235 underdog, I don't know if I'm that confident. If it hits the ground, it's going to be all Moraes. Bobby is great with the takedown defense, but maybe he'll linger too long in the guard or something. Moraes is great on the ground, so he's got a lot more than a puncher's chance in this fight. But I do think Bobby's going to have the answer. I think he's going to beat Thiago up. I'm calling Bobby Greene by a lopsided unanimous decision. Next up is a heavyweight bout between Maurice Greene and Greg Hardy. We've seen a lot of heavyweight fights recently that have meant something, up-and-comers making waves or top contenders battling it out. It's such a volatile division that sometimes I forget about the guys that are just kind of waiting in the middle of it. I like both of these guys because I've seen them both do some pretty crazy stuff, but I've also seen both of these guys tire out and lose fights that they should have won. And I think that's what's going to happen here. It's going to be fun at first, but then they'll both gas out pretty early, and then one of them will lose. I think Greg Hardy is probably better in all the areas that are going to matter. His stand-up and power is probably better. His takedown defense is probably better. His cardio is probably slightly better, maybe. But most importantly, he's going to react better to being tired and desperate during those very long octagon minutes. Hopefully, for the sake of everyone involved, this one ends quickly and brilliantly. But I'm not that hopeful. I think this is a pretty easy pick too. I think it's an even easier pick that this fight will go at least a round longer than it should. But again, with the odds at this moment, Maurice Greene is a 245 underdog. I'm not that certain. In fact, I'd say it's a pretty good bet that if you placed a sum on Thiago Moraes and then the same sum on Maurice Greene, you'd at least get your money back. But I think Hardy wins this one more often than not. I'm calling Greg Hardy by a boring unanimous decision. Next up is a middleweight bout between Kevin Holland and Charlie Ontiveros. My man, Kevin Holland, making his 4th appearance of the year. Kevin and Bobby Greene both have a shot tomorrow at getting their 4th win in 2020. That's pretty crazy. So Kevin Holland replaces Krzysztof Jotko on somewhat short notice to fight Mahmoud Muradov. Then Muradov pulls out this week, and he's replaced by Charlie Ontiveros. Whatever. It's still going to be fun. Oftentimes, the late replacement will have a tough go of it, and likely this won't be any different. Holland's a tough dude to fight whenever, but Charlie has the pleasure of doing it on a few days' notice and has his UFC debut. And I just don't think it's going to go well for him. I think this is a fight that can really highlight all the things that Kevin Holland can do. Charlie Ontiveros is a karate dude. He's got several KO losses, and he's ranked around the 185 mark. Kevin Holland has only struggled with pace, and karate fighters don't routinely keep up that type of pace. We'll likely see 2 fighters keeping their distance and choosing their strikes, and if we see that, we're going to see a prime Kevin Holland. Unfortunately, a win won't do a whole lot for Holland, but he may be able to pad that demo reel. I really like Kevin Holland. I'm enjoying watching his rise. He's going to get tougher competition soon enough, but for now, let's just sit back and enjoy the show. I'm calling Kevin Holland by a 2nd round KO. Next up is a featherweight bout between Andre Fili and ranked number 15 Bryce Mitchell. This is similar to Bobby Greene versus Thiago Moraes in the sense that each fighter has a big advantage in one area. Bryce Mitchell is not your best stand-up fighter, but his grappling and wrestling is that devastating style. Philly doesn't really have KO power, but his stand-up's pretty good. He's got good kicks in boxing, and he can be pretty clever. But if he gets put on his back, he's going to get outclassed. The only real question in this fight is, can Bryce Mitchell get the takedown? That's going to determine the rest of the fight. If he can get it, he's going to get it early and often. If he can't get it, Philly's going to piece him up for the better part of 15 minutes. But I think Bryce is going to get it. I don't expect him to have a whole lot of difficulty getting and keeping the takedown. Andre Philly shows a bit of contentment with fighting off of his back. It's usually not a good idea, but against a guy like Bryce Mitchell, you're going to get beat. Bryce may be able to get a submission somewhere in those 3 rounds. He's certainly capable of it, but I think we're going to see a long one. A one-sided, rinse and repeat, smothering type of fight. I'm calling Bryce Mitchell by a lopsided unanimous decision. And the main event of the night is ranked number 10 middleweight Uriah Hall versus Anderson Silva. It's really too bad that this fight didn't take place 4 years ago when it was originally scheduled. I mean, Silva was still over 40 then, but he wasn't 45. It's also too bad we're not getting Uriah versus Romero. That would have been a good one, and it would have meant something. But instead, we've got a guy who should be fighting the top contenders in the division, and one of the greatest of all time, way past his prime, retiring. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited about it. I'm a huge fan of Anderson Silva. If I had to answer that very difficult question of who's your favorite fighter, it's Anderson. And I've always liked Uriah too. I jumped on that bandwagon before it even left the Ultimate Fighter house. And ever since, it's been a roller coaster, an amazing performance followed by one of his unwilling participant fights. I've always said the easiest way to beat Uriah Hall is just go up to him before the fight and tell him you respect him. Tell him you like him. He'll think you're nice and he won't want to beat you up. I feel like I've seen that happen with him a bunch. I'm being kind of hard on Uriah, I know. It's just that he's made me look silly too many times. And here I go again, because it feels like Uriah may have finally figured this whole fight game out. Lately, he's been talking trash about a bunch of different fighters, including the champion. Maybe he's done being the nice guy, and I certainly hope so. But at this point, beating Anderson Silva's not going to do a whole lot for him, but I do think he'll beat him. This is apparently Anderson's last fight. Last one in the UFC anyway. I wouldn't mind watching him in some other promotions, but it's still going to be sad to watch him leave the octagon. I wish they could have just given him a punching bag as a farewell, but I know that's not really what we do here. If this were a 3-round fight, I would think that Silva could probably make it to the final bell, but this one is scheduled for 25, and I'm just not sure how much he's got left in those old bones. I'm calling Uriah Hall by 4th round TKO. So there's my predictions for UFC Fight Night, Hall versus Silva. It should be fun, and I'll definitely be watching with a box of tissues as Anderson finishes it all up. Let's talk about it afterwards. Hit the subscribe button so you can be notified of those videos, and I appreciate you watching. Till next time.